Hello again. Welcome to the third session of Istanbul International Insurance Conference. This year we are hosting the 12th edition and it's online, as you very well know. Thank you very much for your interest, and I would like to address to our moderator, Mr. Uğur Gülen. He is the CEO of Aksigorta. He's together with us today, Metin Demirel and Mr. Asif John. Welcome. At that moment, I would like to give the screen and the microphone to our moderator, and we leave you the scene. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Menekşe. And welcome to International Istanbul Insurance Conference. In this session, I have two distinguished guests. One of them is joining from London. One of them is joining from most probably Istanbul or Bodrum. We don't know. We are going to ask now Metin. But the topic is very exciting. Topic is data. Data, I think, is not a new topic. Maybe all the human beings decided something looking at data. Maybe 400 years ago, 500,000 years ago, maybe ancient Egyptian times, Egyptians were looking at the sky and looking at the movement of the stars and the moon and the sun, is deciding when to seed, when to harvest, when to make dry their products. And the ancient Mayas also, when you look at the Maya calendars, they all look at the sky and decided what to do. They found those patterns, and from those days to today, of course, the importance of the data has increased and has been increasing as well. And we are going to all discuss about data. What is data, and what is new role of data in the organization, and the new skill, new position, new roles emerged after those data increasing of the, or let's say, exponential rise of data and usage. And after that framework, we are going to talk about the real application, real best practices of analytics and data. Before going to the panel, first of all, I would like to give the word the panelists, our distinguished guests, to introduce themselves. But before that, maybe I would give a few words about myself. My name is Uğur Gülen, and I am the CEO of the Aksigorta since 2009. In my career, I worked in pension and life side of the insurance side, and before then I worked in the banking industry as well as the some e-commerce businesses in my working period. I am an industrial engineer. I graduated from Middle East Technical University. Overall, this is my introduction. Now I would like to give the word to Metin to introduce himself. Please, Metin.
Hi, my name is Metin Demirel. I'm working for Aksigorta. I'm responsible from retail underwriting and technology departments. I've been in Aksigorta 6 years. It's been a long time. I'm a computer engineer, graduated in 91, and I started work in 92. I have 11 years of US experience. I used to have my own company working as a consultant over that. Then I came back to Turkey. I worked a couple of years in Tofaş, Fiat. Then I joined the insurance. It's been 12 years I've been in the insurance. It's a one-way ticket, I believe. Previously, I was working in a different kind of sectors, but right now, last 12 years, I've been all in insurance. Now I'm in the core of the insurance. And I hope this is going to be a very nice, enjoyable conversation tonight.
Thank you, Metin. Yes, we have been working together with Metin in the last 6 years. Definitely, in the journey of digitalization, in the journey of advanced analytical usage in the insurance implication, really, I saw all these development together after Metin joined Aksigorta. Really, most probably in his speech, Metin will mention what we did in the Aksigorta about data, about digitalization. Now, Asif, please.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to come over and present a bit of, give you an overview of insight of data engineering and the importance, but also more so the difference between data engineering and a data scientist as well. But more so a bit about my background. So yeah, I am from London, qualified actuary stroke data scientist, been in the reinsurance industry for circa 20 years now, and I've held several sort of senior leadership roles within my sort of career as well. I'm also the founder for Argenesis, which I'll touch base a little bit. What is Argenesis? But more so, in addition to my sort of data technology consultancy, I also am the chairman for the IFOA's Data Science Working Party. So where I'm managing excess of around 50 mixed qualified actuaries within that domain, and looking at obviously research and learning education on how to streamline that better. In addition to this as well, I'm also a guest lecturer at the London School of Economics as well, where I'm teaching actuarial subjects as well from a practitioner's perspective. I think people do describe me quite a sort of a energetic, positive person, but equally loyal and trustworthy as well. In that sense. So that's a bit of background of myself. If you'd like to know a little bit more, happy to take this offline and
Okay, Asif, thank you. As you have seen, it is very too strong and exclusive and selective panelists we have. And before giving the word to Asif, I would like to remind the participant that you can ask any question you want anytime via Q&A parts of the Zoom screens or other methods. You can send the questions, and throughout the panel, I'm going to ask those questions to the panelists. Before the panel, of course, we discussed with our Asif and Metin what kind of flow, what kind of program we should follow throughout at least 1.5 hour period planned for this panel. And we are going to first start with Asif, and data, importance of data, but there are lots of new concepts around that data: artificial intelligence, machine learning, data scientists, data translators, data engineers. These new roles, new concepts, new positions, and amount of data, the unbelievably increasing pace of that data, and why these are so important. What kind of skills? What are the definitions? So the first part, maybe we are going to put a framework about the data and all the related topic, and Asif will give a short presentation regarding those questions. So please, Asif, this is your turn. After your presentation, of course, we are going to ask new questions, and our participants will raise new questions to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So if I can start sharing my screen, and then hopefully everyone should be able to see my slides coming up shortly. So today's topic is about data engineering. So just to give you the takeaway today is really just to give you an overview of the importance of data, give you the importance of hardware usage, give you the importance of the difference between a data engineer and a data scientist, really, and also where is our industry going towards. So I'm doing this on behalf of obviously Argenesis. So I am the founder of Argenesis. Argenesis stands for AR, augmented reality. Genesis meaning a new beginning, and this is a new beginning. As mentioned earlier, there's new roles that are being created to handle, to future-proof artificial intelligence platforms as well. So this is the background of Argenesis, being a data and technology consultancy company that specializes in helping problem solve clients' challenges, which is what's going through at the moment specifically in the insurance market. And as you can appreciate, also that there is a lot of noise in the market, right? Heavily noise, but there's a saying, a term called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So in other words, whatever you put in is what comes out. So if something's not coming in the data correctly, it's going to come out incorrectly. Don't matter how mathematical you are. So that's why it's important to really harness about data engineering and its importance in that sense. Obviously, I've given you a bit about my background, but let's just go straight into data volume. So as you can appreciate, it's been increasing exponentially. We are in the fourth revolution, and it's really rapidly growing with so much. It's like a spaghetti out there, really, with so much to absorb and digest, right? But whereas over 20 years ago, when there used to be Lisp programming, this sort of information couldn't be computed because of the power of data. Yeah, and these were the challenges even 20 years ago when we were struggling to handle processing data information and capitalizing it into the computer, so managing your RAM. So these were really challenges around 20 years ago as well, really. Though the concept of AI was around 20 years ago within the Lisp programming, but processing couldn't be handled due to fuzzy logics side. So that's why it's so changed now to 20 years ago to now as well, really. Now, even again, Python languages such as R or even other sort of languages have also been around for around circle 20 years, but due to a number of reasons, we're unable to optimize it as I've mentioned as well, really. But today we have multi-core processes, which can obviously, as well as which can be also handled using GPU, which is graphical processing units. So today, this is what's available. Really large amounts of multi-core processing is available, and GPU, which allows us today to handle and manage big data. Whereas historically, what used to really happen is people used to use statistical sampling and write some books on how to sample your data and do some articles. So that is now changed now. So since that time, so therefore now we can compute more power with data available, right? Which will help really and truly the combination of AI and data scientists over time as well. So all of these are really adding great value in terms of how times have changed in terms of the technology and the tools of capability available, really. So that's why it's great to have this facility available, really. I'll touch base now a little bit also data engineering and data scientist. So there is a lot of confusion about what is a data engineer and what is a data scientist. So let's just make aware what is the key differentials between the two of them. As some of you may be aware, data scientists are more problem solvers. Yeah, it's really, they deal with problem statements and try to solve what the problem is associated around it. And obviously data scientists are more sort of mathematical, statistical interpreters of the problem as well, which is where data scientists really falls into. Whereas data engineers slightly bring it, so they'll deal with sort of multi-sources of data to compute and to analyze, and that's really the difference in terms of a data engineer. And they use different tools as well, such as Hadop or even Spark as well. So there's different tools of what I use within data engineering part as well. Essentially, they're both very strong discipline areas. It's like mastering them is like having two lifespans to master them. That's how different now. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, this is just giving you an overview, so I won't be able to go in more technical detail, but it just gives you the differentials between them to to handle. And in summary, data engineers is all about consolidation of multiple sources of data, where all the data points are coming from, and how to consolidate them to create the right dimensions associated with that. So that's really the fundamental difference between it in that respect. Talking a bit about hardware usage, so multi-cores and multi-threads. Most important about hardware usage is, which is going to break down into really two parts, really, individuals and organizations. Yeah. So organizations obviously deal with large data potentially, and they compute a lot of power, but they also now use cloud as well. Now, the thing about the cloud range, there are some good advantages now, which is going on, such as the SQL server, where you can have it as a like a pay-as-you-go, rather than have your traditional hardware usage. And it can also manage multi-core and GPU, graphical processing units, to run. And all that allows you to run really sort of complex machine learning sort of algorithms, even such as dealing with neural networks, which is to do with the unknown territory of understanding your data points in that sense. So, there are different ways of, how things can now be managed rather than the traditional way of hardware. So that's what's really available. Whereas the individuals, it's a bit different. So what I mean by different, in the sense of they typically might use their own laptops to use to deal with these big data processing, and because obviously laptops need to have a certain level of specification, then you've got to obviously again come back to the hardware uses of processing, the RAM associated with it, as well as the GPU, to help you manage to deal with data. There are different ways of the way it's architected as well, with obviously corporate companies, but individuals will obviously have to look at this differently. And just like there is a difference, obviously, with different professions as well. So it also depends on the professional type. So if you're an auditor firm, or if you're an actuaries, they have different data. So you have different hardware usage that is required for you to have as well, really. So these things are very common to identify from the beginning as well. There's also a dependence on hardware usage, the language we use as well, because there are different languages we use. And the three common ones I'm going to mention are R, Python, and Spark. Now, you could have a combination of Python and Spark called PySpark. But these languages are dependable on the usage of the hardware that you're going to use, because not all of them are capable. So, for example, with R has an in-memory computing loads of programming and pushing everything through the RAM. Now, obviously, there's different versions of R, right? So there's the normal R where you have it, then you've also got the micro R as well. So that where you can download data, because obviously it's got other components within the Microsoft program. So, but R in generally always computes in memory, and that's challenging really in that respect. So that's why it's important to know with the hardware usage what languages you're going to be using really. So that's why, in summary, it all really depends on, again, processing, handling, RAM, as mentioned, but also disk I/O. So what is disk I/O? So disk I/O is something that reads and writes information between other languages as well, such as, obviously, as mentioned, Spark. So a lot of, obviously, data scientists don't use Spark, but it is available, and it has some benefits as well, which I'll touch base shortly over. But those are the sort of three things that are really important. For example, in R deals with multifacets, but however, with Spark, it has the capability to deal with large data sets, running it through in memory, and in RDDS, so specializing in handling how you handle your data. So these tools are really important from inception when you're managing big data sets, on what tools you're going to be using. So it's really important to understand all of these different type of languages to determine what hardware usage you do need in that respect as well. Okay, so moving towards the future. So you know, data science it's changing a lot, right? So you know, the future is going towards the AI sort of platform capability. So you're having self-service dashboards as well, or common data services associated with that, which are subject to the time, because I'm also conscious of the time. We may be able to show you a glimpse of how that works, but more so, the other colleague will show the AI capability, which he will touch base in his presentation around that. But it's about really how can data interact with each other and to provide data insights. You know, it's like having a flight mode, right? So how can that all work on a flight mode with everything working in real time, really? There is Microsoft graphs that are available, but more so tree structures are really going towards that. So it's not like the typical SQL, the way you process your data points. So by creating a MS single data, like a river of data, it helps doing your EDA aspect. So that's where the tree structure helps, really. And EDA stands for exploratory data analysis, so analyzing your demographics associated with your with your data set. Moving to the next slide. I appreciate this is quite a lot going on in this diagram, but for the purpose of this, I'm not going to discuss here about data scientists. Yeah, I mean, this could be discussed separately, offline separately, or we can run specifically a separate one for data scientists within this sort of diagram that I'm showing. But this is more focused about data engineering and how data engineering complements the data scientist in which way. So we're going to discuss obviously the common things associated with data engineering. Now, this data engineering is common across not just specifically for insurance, which is what we're here for, but also across other industries as well. So that same principle mechanism is the same, really. So let's talk about a typical thing. What would happen is, let's say we've got a head of analytics and a data scientist, and they're trying to solve a problem relating towards their business. For example, like ultimate loss ratios, yeah? There's a skewness within the ultimate loss ratios. So it does need some attention. So therefore we need to investigate, okay, what kind of features, stroke, and dimensions do we need to get together? So when we're talking about those sort of dimensions, this is where we're really talking about where the data engineer comes in and helps, brings the data points together and brings it alive in that sense, yeah? Because obviously if a data scientist is using a traditional, let's say a GLM model, yeah, which is a dependable variable on the independent, so then, you know, you're dealing with multiple data points there to handle. So this is where, you know, we're trying to, on behalf of a data scientist, collect this data. We need a data engineer to consolidate that. So this is where some of you may be aware, it's the center screen where it shows the master data, which is the finalized data sets, and other the pure end result of what a data scientist or actuaries will be using as a point of collecting the data. But behind the background, obviously, the data engineer obviously collates the data points across it all. So this is what this is called, the master data. Typically, it starts on a 2x2 sort of data table to help analyze it. So it's quite really a flat table which is used. And this obviously transforms into multiple data tables, bringing them all together. So that's what the master data is for. And it informs obviously a data scientist of the data points where they can then start analyzing using their mathematical and statistical techniques to build machine learning algorithms to solve the problem behind the question they're trying to achieve, really. And just going through this all, you can appreciate from the master data, you've got the analytical environment where you create your analytics. People also use something called data lakes as well as part of that feeds into the analytical mind. There's a mixture of data lakes or your data warehouse, or even cloud as well. So there's a mixture of different consolidations that is produced to develop the master data sites. And in this diagram, you will also see a collective of intelligence of all the really multiple data points that are collected, that is then collected to feed into the master data, really. And some of this can be done using the PPML, which is the predictive model makeup language as well, which is mainly used in its XML language point. But these are all collected, and this all then basically helps solve the head of data analytics, the data scientist, in terms of the problem they're trying to solve, really. And as mentioned about the loss ratio, so looking at loss ratio in a multi-dimensional rather than a aggregated way, and having the right data engineer to help you provide that, that's really important. It's also important for a data engineer the frequency of how much this type of data is required. Why I say that? Because this is quite a controversial point here now about really, should we really need any data lakes or not? That's a question, really, because you see, data lakes can store a lot of data and resource, and that can cost thousands and millions of pounds. So there is that question about, do we need all of this or not? But again, this is a controversial topic, which is not for the purpose of this. But for the purpose of data engineer, it's very important to understand the frequency. We need these type of data sets to be coming into the master data, right? So, and that's also to help to economize the resource and the costing associated with it. In that sense, it's also dependent, obviously, from a data analytics and data scientist, the kind of techniques they're using. So if they're going to use like neural networks, which is to do with noise data, then obviously that's also dependent on obviously the data engineer understanding that. So how much data is required, as well as like GLM, as well as some of you may be aware of some of the GLM. So this is just giving you a summary of obviously the importance of a data engineer and the typical job that happens. And these tables, there's different sort of objectives that are achieved through this, as defining the problem, running the data extraction, doing the data transformation. So I'll touch base on that a little bit more with the example of that shortly. But also modeling the data as well, so using time series or even regressions type of techniques associated, and how to improve your data models going forward. Okay, I'm going to show you a video on how this all works, just to give you an idea, and then I will just summarize this video.
Welcome to our river of data. We call it the river because for us, data is the new oil, and it has to be refined in order to bring the most value out of it. We refine raw data received from a variety of sources through a set of filters that have been designed by actuaries, data scientists, and IT professionals. We improve the data quality by various machine learning techniques, which results in the mined data being transformed into a clean data set. A data set that is ready for downstream data processing, as seen in the video. This cleaned data is received by the second stage filter that explores the data using simple statistical techniques and unsupervised machine learning such as PCP and LDA. The exploratory data analysis helps us understand the structure and maturity of the data set so that we can understand and plug gaps in the data before applying any advanced prediction or classification techniques. Once we are satisfied with the structural integrity of the data set, we then pass it through to the next filter. We develop state-of-the-art supervised machine learning classification and prediction models using techniques such as GLM, XGBoost, and many more. These models are constantly improved with our in-house data science research laboratory team. At our final filter, we transform the machine learning models from the last phase into artificial intelligence. This can then be embedded into mobile and desktop applications using standards like DMML. At this phase, we would also provide advanced visuals which help extract data-driven insights for our clients. This stage also integrates into our core offering of providing strategic advice on our clients' portfolio profitability. Please get in touch if you'd like to learn more about our river of data.
So this is how really and truly, when you're talking about from the left-hand side, the raw data, where as that video was demonstrating the importance of why data engineering important and how it complements data scientists as well in that respect, in terms of the data being into the master data, as I mentioned in the previous slide as well, right? But there are some, it's interesting now, there are some mix where data engineering are imputing certain machine learning algorithms even at the data, raw data, to deal with anomalies within your data set. So that's why there are some techniques. So that's why there is that potential confusion around that as well. But as I said, it then flows into the quality of the data. So we create certain reports because these are all part of the process of making sure the data is credible and it reconciles. So, you know, you deal with all of this, and then you got the power of exploring the data. Ultimately, predictive analytics and data analytics, and then solving the problem, which is just really giving that, solving the problem, what's caused it. And this is where you get actuaries and data scientists to come and engage with the business side of things, engaging with the clients. This is still common as well. The data trends, these are still impacted even today. So, you know, when we talk about data culture, we're talking about really and truly providing actuaries with the right tools to remove a lot of the subjectivity associated around data, really. So that's why data culture is very important to actually integrate within a organization as well. The master data is all about the consolidation as well. So you're dealing with multi sources of data, and how do you bring it into a single data platform model and bringing it and bring the best value out of that as well. And then it's about obviously protecting the data. As you know, GDPR is very important now. So it's about how we protect the customer's data as well as our own data, so to make that. And there are now mixed cloud based data storages now, which is also being now really commonly used even now, so which is good. And it's about harnessing that, and also Internet of Things of data. So the Internet of Things is just managing big data sets, really, and sensory data. For example, if you've got a household and you want to know what your meter readings are, there's data collected for that, and to help predict that. So that's what we mean by these type of data. And then the customer focus around the data. So it's so important to take away. The key thing is from the data, from the sort of flat file, understand the customer focus, so the value that we want to bring them. So as much as we're trying to solve a problem, where data engineers will come in and obviously do their part in terms of producing the master center data, it's about really the customer, really, and that's important, really, from the impact of the overall data. So I briefly mentioned about, you know, there is data engineers are also involved in dealing with nonsense or nuisance data. So when you look at certain data, there's some gaps as well, right? So just going on to this graph, a typical histogram graph, this is skewed towards the left. You may think this looks like a Poisson distribution type, which is a statistical distribution technique. But what we're trying to understand here is the missing values, yeah? And now there are different techniques to computate missing values, and which is then statistically sort of sense checked and validated to deal with missing values. For example, let's say you got an average net written premium. You know, typically it's around £350 to £425 range, right? And you can see there are some missing values from there, or there's some anomalies where you got some random £5,000 premiums, for example. And this is where you deal with how you kind of concatenate dealing with missing values of the data as well. So that's how you deal with that. And there's certain machine learning techniques that you can be used as part of that. Similarly, again, same with this as well. So this is just dealing with, mentioned earlier about GLM, so the dependable variable. So we call it in data science the target variable. So we're trying to understand the data correlation with each of the data features associated with that. So that's what this curve is representing. Again, the data engineer from ground up will produce the data sets for this to help data scientists on there, so you can appreciate the benefit of this, really looking at the correlations of different variables that are important as part of it. And this is a real live data using motor as well, so you can see on the x-axis or the features named such as vehicle age or policyholders experience and so on. And there's the green color is a representation of how strongly dependent it is on the target, or shall we say dependable variable that is important. So here's a crossover between data engineering and data scientist process. So for this purpose, I've concatenated 3 categories of IoT, which I've mentioned earlier, looking at your existing data as well in terms of storage, and also social data as well. So these are important as well. Then we talked a bit about obviously using the data cloud and the data, so you can use a mixed match of both of them. Now, again, if you're working individually, I've mentioned about obviously if you work individually or if you work for a corporate organization, really depends, and this is how you determine how you connect with your cloud or your data warehouse as well. And we create small projects from this that produce obviously value for the clients, really. And then you need to have the right team here. So data engineering, data scientists, data analytics lead as well, data architectures, you need the right team to help you fulfill these problem solving, what we're trying to do at the end, which then leads on to really and truly your data analytics. So there's different tools out there like Power BI, which is run by Microsoft. There's also R-Shiny as well, which is, or Jupyter. There's different analytics tools that you can use. Analytics is very important, especially given, despite what's happened with the COVID-19, the pandemic. This is where your data analytics would really show value. And you need data engineers really to create your master data behind it to manage that. And then this then falls into your machine learning. So where if you're dealing with a preset data sets or not, but it runs the algorithm around it to build that. So machine learning, you can look at it like an umbrella, right? Where it's got multiple folds of techniques and it runs that sort of algorithm behind it, which then leads on to artificial intelligence. So over a period of time, it becomes more of an AI, artificial intelligence, which then solves the problem for clients on the final one, really, in terms of what they're trying to achieve. So this is why this crossover between data engineer and data scientist process. This is a generalized framework around how that all works.
Yes.
Some of the commercial values of
Asif, maybe at that point, maybe we can give a break. And up to that point, you gave provided very valuable information about data engineering, how the process has been going on, starting from raw data to processed outcomes. Maybe at that point, we can give us the word to Metin in order to tell the business implication of those processes, those flows. Then after you can continue your presentation, and with that way, maybe we can combine both technical part of the data and the business implication at the same time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Metin, I would like to give the word to you now. Asif is very well really described what an engineer, what a scientist is doing, and what is happening behind the scene. But in front of the, let's say, audience, in front of the customers, in front of the shareholders, you have to do something, and you have to apply, and you have to give a lot of decisions looking at the data. and you have to see the impact of those new decisions, intelligence decisions, on our P&L, on our market share, on our underwriting results, on our underwriting margins. Maybe at that point, could you tell us how business side of the data is going on?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Asif. I start to remember my university days, you know. But yeah, those companies I put my behind scenes, actually, they are successful because they know how to apply the data to their business. I mean, you may have the data, you may have everything, but if you don't know how to apply this to your ongoing business, then unfortunately, there is no way to benefit from this. But you can see the companies at this moment, you know, at this point, those are the most valuable big companies, especially after the COVID. They become more successful because they know how to use the data, how to actually integrate, embed that data, that knowledge to their core business. And when it comes to the insurance, actually, we are very, very familiar with the data because we calculate the risk, and based on that risk, we come up some cost structure, and you know, we make the money from that calculations, and we are good at that so far. But things are changing, you know, because so far the data, we have some proprietary data, we own that data, and we know some specific methods like GLM, you know, in the motor insurance, and using that GLM and to come up some prices and to sell our products. But the time is changing because, as Asif mentioned that, okay, the AI was there, the machine learning was there before, but it wasn't commonly available. Right now it's available, and we have more data, actually. We not just specific insurance data, we have a lot of data, related data regarding to the people and their behavior and everything. So if you approach this in a classical way, unfortunately, you are behind in the competition, and you go uphill, actually. So you got to find a way to change your legacy structure to apply this to core business. It doesn't just start with the data. It also starts with some digitalization in your processes as well, because you may come up some algorithms in the data, but if you cannot apply this to your operations, unfortunately, that data doesn't that valuable anymore. What we are doing, I would like to give some specific examples. Right now, okay, we apply a classical GLM method to calculate our cost and risk in the motor insurance, specifically motor insurance, because motor insurance is the biggest market share in the retail in the Turkish market. And it may change in 10 years, we may talk about that, but at this moment, it is the biggest, it's the bread and butter of the companies, you know. So you have to be successful in the motor insurance. And I'm sure Asif lives in London. That aggregator market over there also shows that the motor insurance is the driving point of this. So applying the classical GLM gives you a success at a certain point, but GLM is not enough, you know, because you gotta do more, especially in this environment. We are living in a roller coaster environment, especially in Turkish market, because as you guys know, the FX rates and everything's impacting our calculations, risk calculations here. We are also adding another layer, machine learning layer on top of the GLM. So that machine learning layer actually completes the missing part of the GLM right now. As you know, Uğur, after we applied this GLM, we gained 2% market share in the MTPM. And the the recent calculation shows our loss ratio is pretty competitive. Actually, we didn't lose anything, but we gained. So this gives us a big advantage. But that's not an easy thing to apply. First of all, you have to change your team structure, because if you work with the data engineers, data scientists, IT, underwriters, business together in the hierarchical organization silos, unfortunately, it is very difficult or almost impossible to apply this kind of things. That companies, you can see in my back, actually work in a different way. So what we did, we changed our retail underwriting hierarchy to the Agile way. We created squads. In that squads, actually, there are actuarial guys, there are underwriters, and there are data engineers, there are data scientists, and there are also some IT people, developers and business owners. First time it was difficult to work all bunch of people from different background and different silos. It was very challenging. But after a couple months, 6 months, actually, especially with the COVID, after people release from that company structure and they stuck at home, those guys on those squads become kind of very good collaborators or partners or friends, whatever you call it. And we the machine started rolling, In 6 months, actually, we come up with 3 tariffs implementation, and each of them was a great success for us. I mean, I wasn't even expecting that's going to be happen. But in order to do this happen, first of all, okay, data engineers is out there. They know the data. They know our table structures and everything. Data scientists out there, they know how to actually apply the algorithms, machine algorithms, and figure out. And also actuarials out there, and there are very difficult to work people, by the way, because I've been leading this actuarial team and underwriters almost 2 years. They know very well what they know, but they like to work solo, because that things is very, very specialized. But that knowledge become valuable when they come together, actually, because if they are not together, if you run them in a silo mode, it's like a lost in translation. Everybody asks something from other person, and it starts like blaming to the other person, Okay, I didn't do this because of that. And they say, okay, I did this, but I don't know what exactly that field means, kind of things going on. But these guys, when they work together in the squad, and it's a tremendous, after a certain period of time, of course, and after a lot of how am I whining and dining, let me put it that way, it became a tremendous synergy, tremendous, unbelievable, Suddenly those data scientists and data engineers start to understand the business, or actuarial guys start to understand the benefit of the machine learning. And another thing, IT people also understand how to embed those things in the operational system, because you can find anything, like, for example, this machine learning AI we are applying to our MTPL traffic product. Is calculating more than 60 variables. Some of them are synthetic variables in 1 second. This is very, very important, because when the customers try to get that product, actually it is like a bidding, on the screen they compare the prices. Price is the only thing, when it comes to this compulsory product. And if you cannot do that calculations in a 1 second, you're out of that bidding, So they start to understand, our data engineer or IT people start to understand, okay, if you're going to do this calculation, you're going to do this in a quick way. And you have to actually integrate this to the operation. Otherwise, nobody going to say in 5 minutes, I'm going to give the better price. Especially we have the 10% market share, and this 10% market share, you cannot actually come to the specific price request. So what I'm trying to say here, if you try to be a digital, like the guys behind me, you have to change the way you are working right now. And the best way to work, actually, adaptable way to work is the Agile squad way of work. And you have to mix those different kind of expertise in those squads. And then you start to see the benefits. I'm not talking about the technology, because technology, of course, you have to be know what you're doing, and you have to get the right data. But data is out there. I mean, if you know where to look at, I'm sure you're going to find the data. And another thing, another important thing, you have to change your operations to collect the data from the right points. Previously, we didn't have right connections, right points to collect the data. But we've been actually moving our company to the digital last 4 years, let me put it that way. We moved most of our operations to the software robots. So when you do that, actually, you start to get in those things, those data from that points previously, you didn't have those data. So you can also utilize that data, and you can integrate your processes with data. Actually, you're moving your company to the virtual. This is important because why is it important? Again, like Amazon, Google, Facebook, those are digital born companies. They live on the digital environment. So in their processes, in their everything, they know how to use the data, they know how to collect the data, and they know how to actually feedback those information to their processes. So as a legacy company, like an insurance companies, we have to learn this. In order to learn this, actually, we know how we should apply to digital assets or wherever is applicable to move ourselves to the digital. And I like to comment on that other than the insurance company, like in 90s, I'm always telling this because this is very critical. 95, I went to US. And at that time, the Democrats, they were created the virtual economy, this .coms and everything. When you checked out the roots of these companies, actually, they've been created mostly in the 90s. And at that time, we didn't know why it's happening. But it was clear that they moved the economy to the virtual environment. And when you move to things to virtual environment, actually the Moore's law, you know Asif very well, it doubles every 2 years. And they created an environment they can actually not just that processing power. Right now, their valuation actually doubles every 2 years, thanks to they moved their economies to the virtual environment. So if you want to exist and be competitive, actually you got to find the way to move yourself, your operations, your processes and everything to the virtual. And when you move to the virtual, actually, it is much more easy to utilize the AI, software, robots, or cloud. Right now, what we are doing, actually, we are using the cloud. If the cloud doesn't exist, there wouldn't be such kind of conference call. Because I remember the times, Cisco telepresence, we were paying a fortune just doing the point-to-point conference call. But right now, you're in the London, and there are a lot of people actually joining different kind of the world. And we are doing this conference call perfectly. So that's the new world. I think we should adapt it. And there are big competition going on. I was talking about the Bill Clinton and Al Gore in the 90s. Right now, the Trump actually in America competing with the China, especially in the 5G, you know, that a lot of companies and the economy is impacted from this because whatever the internet at time, right now the 5G is going to be the similar thing because the IoT and everything, driverless cars or whatever you see in the future, they all depend on the 5G infrastructure. whoever going to control this actually going to control the future. So we should see from that point, I believe. So if you are be on the tide, I think you can be very, very successful because there are a lot of tools exist in these days.
Yeah, Metin, thank you very much. It was very illuminating, and you also gave the winning formula for a successful organization. Team structure from functional to agile transformation would be the key, working together in a collaborative way, and collecting the data in the right points, and the right data in the right points for the right customer. Definitely, it is the winning formula. In the next question after Asif, I'm going to ask, how about fraud? I know in Aksigorta we have a very strong fraud tool as well. One of the area we are using data is on the fraud side. Maybe after Asif, you can give a few idea regarding how Aksigorta is implementing motor and non-motor side fraud. Yes, Asif, you were just mentioning structured and unstructured data. So really now data is becoming much more unstructured. Maybe in the past, most of the data was structured data, but today pictures, texts are becoming much more important, even the social media data. So there are lots of structure. Really the ratio between structured and unstructured data, most probably the unstructured data is growing more than structured data. So what do you think about it? How do you continue?
Yes, thank you. That's quite to differentiate between structured and unstructured. Unstructured is quite a detailed topic about that, and perhaps I can answer it more detail further. But in summary levels, obviously you're dealing with unstructured data, so such as image processing as an example, or on how your data is scattered as another example to deal with unstructured data. But there's different techniques as well to manage unstructured data. So I mentioned earlier about neural networks, maybe using propagation techniques. So I appreciate it might be a technical term, but again, I'm happy to have that separately, a DL. Cool. But the way neural networks works, it's got sort of multiple permutations it deals with, behind it all, and it looks at all the sort of kind of data points associated with that, and it creates obviously output values from that, really. So this is where you might use unstructured data to look at as one of those type of techniques for also in that sense. Now, for the purpose of this, what I was showing you on this slide is really and truly once the data engineering side is all being consolidated, you can see some of the real business value as well in terms of what it can bring alive for everybody, right? So this is a typical reserving. As some of people already are online would understand, reserving is always done on triangulation basis, and from an audit perspective, that's interpretable and readable and easier to sign off, right? So, but the challenge you have is now there's so much granular data now. How do we bring the best out of granular data as well, right? And to see what value can it add. So what we're doing here is we've got concatenations of different peril types, and within the peril types is how do you then concatenate those peril types within there. So there's something called a deviation of an average profile, which basically means is you look at the average variance difference to cluster them together. So this is a clustering technique on this diagram here, which helps improve the data. So therefore, in summary, what you're doing is you're using both your aggregated assumptions as well as your granular assumptions, and to determine the reserving allocation that is required. And with this exercise that we've run, we've improved it by around 13%. So in very layman terms, what that means is instead of having a liability book of £100 million reserved for your IBNR and IBNER, you may only need 87 million because it's improving it by 13% here. That's a huge difference. So this just shows you the importance of data. That's number one. But this also should show you the importance of a data engineer's role as well. When I mentioned earlier about the problem solving, these are problems that need to be solved by a data scientist, actuary, stroke, head of analytics. Then the data engineer will go behind the background to create your master data associated with that, which I showed earlier on. So that's what this is really showing, proof of the pudding in terms of what the value it can bring for us all, really, in reserving. The next one is really AI. So I mentioned earlier about, there's some real big power plays in there like Google or Apple, even Facebook and Netflix and power. So what we're saying is, how do we engineer this to bring the best value of it? So I mentioned about the future, about where is it going? And I mentioned about self-service dashboards and using AI. He mentioned earlier, like becoming more of a sort of a virtual sort of insurer or even stroke broker as well, right? So this what I'm about to showcase you is some of the value of this, what can be happen. And there's 4 fundamental benefits in this. The first benefit is that the AI platform that we're using here able to interpret the motor data that comes in. So it kind of works out an EDA. The other aspect is you can write to it yourself. The third aspect is that you can talk to it as well. We have to be mindful of using the right linguistic patterns of language we use. So for example, if I use premium, but it's called GWP, then the linguistics are not going to work. So you've got to be mindful of understanding your data to what language you need to communicate the AI so it can interpret your data set within it. And the fourth one is really and truly is how you can really work this in real time, share it amongst your team, which I'll show you in this little video clip that we've created. It is a 4-minute video. I'm not going to go through the whole 4 minutes. I'm just going to show you the key sort of takeaways from this and in terms of the way this is engineered.
Hi, I'm your Q&A virtual analyst. You can ask me questions about your data. Here are some suggestions to get started. Just say or tap what you want to see and I'll show it.
Show me featured insights.
Here are some insights I found. In Insight 1, I found that accident frequency shows seasonality. Here is accident frequency by accident date excluding null. It shows accident frequency shows seasonality.
I'm just pausing here so you can already see a couple of key points from here that the AI was recognizing some of the seasonality associated with the data. That's number one. We were able to verbally communicate with it as well. And you can already see it's already starting to zoom into the data set as well.
I found. In Insight 1, I found that accident frequency shows seasonality. Here is accident frequency by accident date excluding null.
I'm going to move on because it's a lengthy video, but I'm going to try to show you the key points to take away from this, or which is where it's zooming in.
Amount. C. Here is accident frequency by accident year, accident month. Here are
So you can already see how the self-service dashboard is coming alive using different components of this. But this also you have to appreciate is the data engineering aspect to bring it out.
Frequency by accident date for 2008. It shows accident frequency for accident year 2008.
And this is your AI talking based on the data.
Here are some insights.
And you can see here it's just circled, you can pencil it through, And on the white box there, you can share it amongst your audience accordingly as you wish. So you can appreciate, you can use your iPad or even your iPhone, depending on the technology you use as well. You can adapt it really. So these are some of the real values of once your data engineering is all done in the right way and you've mapped it accordingly. So and these are the really commercial value business insights that you can get from this all.
Here are some insights I found. In Insight 1, I found that column.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. So I don't have anything else on these slides to share, but in summary, you can appreciate, hopefully you've taken away the importance of a data engineer, data scientist, the importance of how things are changing over time, the importance of hardware usages, and the role of a data engineer, and that's why it's important now to create these sort of roles and opportunities within companies, organizations as well, to help bring more value into it.
Thank you, Asif. It is very valuable information you provided. Maybe at that point, I will give the word to Metin. So Metin, I know we have been using data for very different types of decision-making points. One of them, I said fraud. Maybe you can give some words regarding fraud, but other than fraud, we are predicting the next move of the agents, for example, behavior of agents. We are using data on that part. We are using data where to open new agencies. It is another typical and important question to answer. Maybe you can give some smart scoring on the case underwriting. This is, I think, one of the most innovative implication in Aksigorta, because there is no such company, not in Turkey, maybe all over the world. Now we are going to replace our underwriting by other Aksigorta digital assistants soon. So all the underwriting will be done by AI with the knowledge of copying the knowledge of underwriting. So what other examples, best practices can you tell about other than pricing, motor pricing?
Actually, that's a good point. First of all, as I said, when you move your operations in a virtual environment, in a software, it gives you a lot of opportunities to apply it, because you start collecting the data first. And there are a lot of tools out there, as Asif mentioned, that AI is publicly available, and you can utilize those AI machine learning algorithms to that data, and you start to see the patterns. One thing, other than you mentioned, Uğur, is like smart insurance processes, like we have that digital mirror. What we do, digital mirror is like a digital twin of the company, operational departments. What we do, we create the digital twin or digital mirror of the operational departments. We analyze them, and based on that, actually we improve their performances. And they start actually, you can start to find the routine, the patterns. And if there are some deviations occurs in that pattern, or if you see some bottlenecks or other things, it gives you an alert, and you actually adjust them. You make the company smart. Let me put it another way. It's like the IoTs on the home or the engines or whatever. This is a different way on the insurance company and operations. Or other things like predicting the agency behaviors. Because when you start to collect data, and especially Turkish environment agents, they are multi-agents. They're like brokers. They work with different companies. It is very, very important for us to understand early prediction of their behaviors. because they directly impact us in order to get some advanced actions to avoid or increase their performances. Again, the main point, you can apply this in everywhere. As far as you put your company in that position. Otherwise, it is tremendously difficult to apply. And I would like to tell another thing, like we use those core insurance applications or ERP on the other sectors, they call it, but we have core insurance applications. But basically those core insurance applications are the reflection of the way you're doing business. Actually, what are those codes? Those codes are captured in a system. In a time, you know, you can see like 30 years of time of knowledge in those systems. And what happens actually when you froze them on those systems, the newcomers, they learn the business from those systems. It's very difficult or impossible to change the way you are doing business if you are stick on those core systems. Because those core business is like when you check it out the earth, you can see the different levels coming from the different eras. When you check out those codes in those systems, you can see the like 40 years ago knowledge actually stuck in the system, and you're using that thing, and nobody knows in the company actually, you know. And we are trying to change this, like those smart risk calculations, especially in the case underwriting. This is the new thing, and I think that's going to be a kind of one of a kind thing. What we are going to do, we are going to actually gather those data from the systems and apply the AI and come up with a smart scoring before those case underwriting and pricing comes. So that thing is going to be a capture actually in a different way. Right now, the process is captured, but the output, the result didn't capture. But when you capture this with the machine learning or AI, you may start to see the different level on those case underwriting as well. And this going to, it's not, I'm not going to tell this, okay, underwriters is going to replace with this. Actually, we're going to provide a very powerful tool to the underwriters. They are going to give their decisions based on that tool. So this is going to give us a tremendous competitive advantage. This already being used in the fraud. We've been using the fraud module almost 5 years now. And that impacted our fraud ratio in a very good way. Because previously we were utilizing very basic things, rules, but right now after utilizing that sophisticated tool and getting that score online and in 3 times in the operations, when the first notice of loss, when the adjuster checking the proper file, and when the payment time, actually it gives us 3 times to understand the things is really fraud or not. But again, is integrating this thing in our operation was the challenge as far as the find and the fraud score. And the same thing, you know, integrating the agency behaviors to our field teams, sales teams, is another you know, big accomplishment to integrate them. It's like a I heard this for the Sabancı meeting, bionic people, right? There used to be a bionic people. People are integrated with the bionic tools when they give the decision, actually, that things helps them, you know. So both human and that knowledge together, and you are giving a you know, very, very good, sharp decisions, competitive decisions. That's what's happening in the big digital companies at this stage. against the other competitors.
Thank you, Metin. Indeed, you gave a lot of very nice examples. But at the end of the day, what you said is very important. You can have data, you can have engineers, translators, scientists. You can create outputs, but the art is execution. To execute them and to really put in action. That is also the part of the another. I'm going to add the third ingredient to your winning formula. The execution is the art. So
I would like to give one example, Uğur Bey, regarding to execution. Like Asif said that this machine learning AI algorithms out there 50 years, God knows, 60s, 50s probably is out there. The problem was there were no processing power to execute them in a right on time. But right now we have all the processing power and all the data to execute them. And that makes a difference.
Yes, you are right, definitely. So we are coming to end. It is now 15 to 6 p.m. So I'm going to ask a last question before taking the question from participants. Now I would like to, I'm going to ask that question, both of you. So please imagine 10 years later from now on, and how do you think that, how do you imagine that an insurance company can run 10 years from now on? What kind of new skills, new competencies, new organization structures, new talents an insurance company must have in order to be successful 10 years from now on? Could you give your opinion? Could you give your recipe, success recipe for the insurance companies, very briefly? Yes, Asif, let's start with you.
You briefly touched base, is basically becoming a virtual insurer, right? So to become a virtual insurer, you need to have the enabler levers associated with that, right? And I touched base about having the right sort of capabilities within the company to become that, right? As a virtual insurer, that's that would be the key things. So data engineer, data architecture, data scientists, actuaries, from a sort of business acumen perspective. So all of these key things do play a big role in transforming into a virtual insurer. I think a lot of the decisions will be now driven by a lot of less subjectivity and more quantitative, but the subjectivity will be a function of your quantitative insights that you provide. So whereas historically it was a lot more different. And I just kind of showcased a bit of an AI capability in that small little video, and in terms of what you can achieve and what you cannot achieve. But to do this, you need the right data. That's number one, as I mentioned in my story. But also what I haven't really mentioned is culture. You see, a strategy, everyone can have a strategy and everyone can replicate a strategy. But if you don't have the right culture for these changes of time, then none of this will really kind of blossom into real business value, really. So that's where I see sort of the future heading towards in that direction. I mean, there is a lot more I can discuss on a technical level, but maybe that could be a separate discussion. But for the purpose of this high level, this is really and truly the key drivers behind it, really. I don't know if Mehmet, do you want to add anything further to what I've said?
Yes, the future. First of all, insurance industry is a overall $5 trillion industry. It's a very lucrative money, actually, for the companies behind me. They would like to, because they are disruptors. On top of me, you can see the Netflix, actually. Now there is no Hollywood or nothing, you know. They are giants. They are eating everything. As you know, Google over there with the YouTube, and you know, so they are they are like a hunters and looking for the disrupt the big value and get those their chunk from that. And $5 trillion is a big value. You know, we are talking about like the economy, like the Japan economy. Each year, $5 trillion out there, and the motor is around like close to the 1 trillion. Is 900 billion or whatever. Maybe Asif knows better than me, but and we are talking about the driverless cars in 10 years. So motor business is going to be becoming like a commodity. So that part is gone, you know. Now, $1 trillion probably going to shrink like $200 billion or whatever. But motor business is not that old, you know. It started on 1920s, 30s. Before that, there is no casco, there is no MTPL because the car started at that time. And most likely there are going to be a new insurance areas. So in order to insurance companies protect their wealth and the position, they need to become like a technological companies or ecosystems or whatever. They need to find to utilize their power with the stakeholders. Before because now the regulations are protecting us, but after those regulations, there is a very, very lucrative market out there, you know. So the others can prey on us. So we should be very, very careful. And I think that the best way to change the company, we should change our organizations. That's why those tribes, squads, and that kind of things are important, because those are like embedding those technology inside the knowledge. So it gives a different kind of breed. Whatever the future, that we should be embed our technology, not just the technology, technological people like data scientists, data engineers, IT people, inside our business people, like core people, actuarial people, underwriters, or sales. Then you become very, very powerful actually in the virtual environment, and you can be a very good partner for the other guys. That's all I can say. So we'll see, we'll live.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. Definitely, life is changing, technological changing is driving the businesses. Insurance industry is one of the, let's say, oldest industry currently running environment. 300, 400 years ago, there are insurers, but today as well, there are insurers, maybe at the same name. So in order to cope with those technological changes, definitely insurance industry has to change its way of doing, and more virtual insurers, becoming more virtual insurers, data-driven insurance, changing the culture, and as Metin mentioned, becoming a technological company in the insurance domain, I think is the right word. To achieve that, definitely changing the KPIs and then changing the way of doing, changing the organization is the major enablers to manage that change. So I think this is the end of our conversation. I would like to get the questions from participants. Maybe Menekşe Hanım and Fahri Bey may help me. There are some questions I am reading, but
please, you see.
Maybe, yeah, Menekşe Hanım, maybe you can manage the questions for me.
Okay, as you wish. The first question is addressed to Metin Bey from Aşkın Düşünlere. Hi Metin Bey, how did the introduction and implementation of the new AI applications and use of new smart tools affect your operational processes and employees and middle managers who are responsible for a streamlined routine tasks?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Actually, our company growing very fast since I joined, right? it's doubling, but our employee number is steady actually. Last 5 years, our employee number didn't increase. And on top of it, I believe there is also big importance on that one. When we move our operations, our other Aksigorta digital assistant, that also impacted the motivation of the people as well. Our employee engagement score is very high. Last 2 years, we are the winner of the best employer. I think this also may help to support the employees, because for a human being, doing a routine task, operational task is a torturous. So given those things to the robots, software robots, and actually for the human being, actually allow an area, they can use their creativity and see the results, give them a tremendous motivation. We start to use the AI recently. We've been working on that a year now, but in a full scale, we start to use recently, and we see the tremendous impact. Unbelievable, you know, that impact is out there, is tremendous. But it's not that easy to apply on the operations. Again, you should have some solid structure, backbone in order to apply it. But if you apply it, you can start to see the impacts easily. And we are going to utilize this on the case underwriting as well. I think that's going to be another success story soon. Hope this answers the questions.
Yeah. Maybe I may add a few words what Metin said. We have some working principles in Aksigorta. I'm not going to list all 5, but one of the working principles all well-defined jobs must be done by machines, and ill-defined jobs must be done by employees. Well-defined jobs means those routine jobs, as Metin mentioned. Any job that requires less cognitive skills can be defined as a well-defined jobs. And in the leaderships of Metin and the all Aksigorta leadership team, definitely we transferred most of the well-defined jobs to machines. So now currently the employees has been doing jobs which are ill-defined jobs, which requires much more cognitive skills, involvement, more communication, more creativity. Although our number of employees headcount has been same in the last 5 years, when we look at the mix of that employees, really there is a remarkable shift from operational jobs to more technological employees, more sales, more strategy, more marketing part. Maybe 5 years ago, more than 50% of employees were doing some operational jobs. Today, only 25 to 30% of employees are doing operational jobs. 70% of the employees are not doing any operational job. They are using their cognitive skills. They are using their creativity. Maybe that is one of the reasons why the employee engagement score is very high in Aksigorta. Although it looks like a paradox, it is not paradox. It is working like that indeed. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Aşkım. Yes, Menekşe Hanım, next question, I think to Asif. There's a question for Asif.
Yeah, what's the question?
I think Menekşe Hanım dropped from line. Let me read. How would you embed data governance into data engineering process without endangering speed and agility?
That's a very good question. So it's interesting, this question about data governance, right? Because I managed, as the chairman of the data science within the Institute of Actuaries, we have a work station called Professionalism, Ethics and Regulations. Yeah. So it's so important that as I mentioned, garbage in, garbage out, there needs to be a governance framework around it. in terms of how do we know this data is credible, you know, is it standardized in a way? And it's about adopting similar things what we've have as within our actuarial code, something called the TAS 100, which stands for the Technical Actuarial Standards. Yeah, so there is a framework on knowing how credible the data is. So we need to adopt that type of thing. There's also, even in the European Parliament Council, which happened in, I think it was in April 2016 approximately, where we're talking about protection of the nature of persons processing personal data and making sure there's no sort of free movement with such data as that as well. So there needs to be that kind of within each company's organization. So there need to be some sort of adaptation around it. And obviously, as we know about the GDPR as well, as associated around it, and making sure customers are treated fairly, and also the data is obviously protected in that respect as well. There's also an ethical side of it, of your data, in terms of sort of integrating this within your sort of data governance as well, because you're going to need all of this. Now, there's no sort of magic wand in which way it needs to be done, but what you have to be mindful, there needs to be some principle framework that needs to be adopted within a organization associated with that. As well as that, there needs to be obviously knowing the techniques that you use. So if you use GLM versus neural networks, they're two different things. I mean, GLMs you can backtrack, but neural networks has some challenges because it goes into an unknown territory called the hidden layers behind it, where it creates permutations of different outputs, and there's no way of backtracking it. So you've got to be mindful about how do you govern that data in that respect, really. And each organization will maybe have its own adaptation, but maybe there might be within the sort of regulations that where there needs to be some form of framework around it, that where it's more uniform across the whole countries or industries across that. I hope that's answered their question, but I'm happy to have that a more further detailed conversation around that if needed with the person who works.
Thank you very much. Uğur Bey, Fahri Bey has asked a question from the chat box.
Okay.
The panelists can only use chat box. Fahri Bey, would you like me to read it or would you like to read yourself?
Please read it.
To the panelists, to both of you or all of you, how do you adopt a pricing tool with incentive-based model in online by using these new techniques and data?
So I think this would be more for me as being an actuary, right? So when you mean incentive tool, can I just clarify? Are you talking about more new business renewals incentives, right? Is that what you're talking about there? Is that what you...
Campaign and also some other incentive and additional commissions and so on like this.
Okay. I understand that, yeah. So your pricing is one aspect in understanding, looking at your rating structures and the discounts and loadings associated with that rating structure, right? What you're going to try to think about is overlaying it with two things. One is behavior scoring of customers, yeah, so overlaying it with a behavior score, and also having a data analytics framework that when you're looking at real data, you understand implicitly the behavior score as well as the risk characteristics of the rating structure behind that, to understand how you can incentivize them. Let me obviously things have changed in the UK law now, because the FCA have said something about new business renewals, and so new business and renewals need to be the same price. But just for the purpose of this discussion, you know, you can have different tenures. So as an example, the longer that you renew it, the more discount you get on your renewal. So these are sort of scoring discounts that you can incentivize, or you can cross subsidize it with different products as well, as you can add on as a add-on as well as part of that as well. So there's really different ways. It's not just a numbers point, it's also a product and underwriting point, is how do you structure to incentivize the right proposition for clients to be more attractive to. Has that answered your question?
I may add something. Fahri Bey, I may add something.
Yes, Metin Bey.
Pricing is one thing. Incentive, actually, after I joined this insurance business, when I heard about the campaign, I was always thinking about the end customer. Then I understood it's not the end customer, actually, it's the distribution channel. It took some time for me to understand. Usually these commissions and campaigns goes to the distribution channel. I'm talking about the retail part, you know. And, you know, it's like you give the right price for the customer, actually. But incentive for the distribution channel, because they are working multi. They are not, they're like aggregator, Asif, in the UK. They work more than one company here. So you got to come up the right incentive and right price in order to sell your product through them. And right now in the pricing, okay, we are applying this machine learning algorithm. But when you add to the incentive on top of it, actually the equation changes. Now it becomes like two-dimensional, right? From one-dimensional to the two-dimensional. But I think we can do something in the near future for that. You have to, it's like, it's an X equation become like X plus Y equation. And we have the right tools, but our systems is not that ready yet, but we are bringing that point far away. Don't worry about it. So we're gonna have both tools in order to make it more sellable.
Okay, thank you, Metin. So, Menekşe Hanım, I think there is no more questions from our participants, and it's also 8:18, so we have come to end. Please, you can close with your words, please.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, Uğur Bey, Metin Bey, and Asif, thank you very much for your time and participation. As Istanbul Underwriting Center, we are grateful for all the efforts of all the participants as the organizing sponsor, and as STD, Insurance Practitioners Associations, I would like to pass the word to our dear President, Mr. Fahri Altıngöz, to say his closing words. Fahri Bey.
Menekşe Hanım, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank to all participants. Actually, it was very valuable panel and discussion, that I can say. And also, I take some notes which were highlighted in the speech and also the discussion. Advanced analytic, digitalization, data engineering, data scientist, robotics, lead generation, machine learning, data quality, data store, IoT, BOT, algorithm, automation, agile way of work, developer, squad, sprint, transformation, future of work, and life is changing, that Uğur mentioned. It means that change, it is a very, very important and critical word, I do believe. So let me say my special thanks to Istanbul Underwriting Center, which is our organization sponsor, and also Sigortacılık, Gazetesi, our media sponsor. And have a healthy day, and hope to see you in our next organization. Thank you very much, Uğur Bey, Mr. Asif, dear Metin, for your contribution. It was very, very valuable discussion, that I can say. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a good day.